Welcome everybody to today's video. Today on Elections Retrospective, the channel where we discuss American politics, elections, both past and present, and history. We will be taking a deep dive into the 2022 New York gubernatorial election. Now, back in March of 2021, Andrew Cuomo had misconduct allegations during his time in office uncovered from past conversations. On top of this, there's the nursing home scandal, which he in which he had inadvertently led to the deaths of upwards of thousands of elderly citizens, which combined with this mounting scandal has really created somewhat of a predicament for the embattled governor. Now, what lies ahead for him is much unknown. And so we will discuss in today's video the likeliest possibility for Andrew Cuomo moving ahead. Now, there is a possibility that he simply walks out of the scandal somewhat unscathed and cruises on to re-election. While his approval rating currently is a net negative of 5%, it's actually an improvement over uh, previously, earlier this year, where he had a net negative of 12%. So it is certainly an improvement, which shows that he is improving with regards to his approval rating. Sure, it's nothing to be bragging about, but it is pretty significant and something worth noting. Now, due to his unpopularity and scandal, he might face a few primary challenges. And there's talk that he might face a possibility of being unseated. However, they don't seem to pose much of a threat to his renomination so far. Now, this is the potential Democratic primary field. Currently, Alessandria Biaggi, a state senator since 2019, Bill de Blasio, the term-limited mayor of New York City, will be leaving office in 2022, Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, Hakeem Jeffries, a representative from New York's 8th, and Juman Williams, a New York City public activist, all comprise of the potential Democratic primary field. Now, none of them have announced a bid for governor yet, and it remains to be seen if any of them run. So, now, you can notice quite a few well-known names up here. As well, people have been speculating that AOC might be trying to challenge Cuomo. And now these candidates don't pose much of a threat to Cuomo if you look at the polling. In two polls done by Zogby Analytics, Andrew Cuomo defeats both Letitia James and AOC by double digits. Letitia James only wins 22% of the vote in the poll done on her. And with AOC, she slightly improves and only gets 24% of the vote still. Now, at first glance, a primary challenger that successfully unseats Cuomo doesn't seem very likely if you look at this so far. So say Cuomo wins his renomination, which seems like a pretty safe bet, but not entirely likely. It seems to be the most likely option. And say that Cuomo advances to the general election, would the Republicans really pose much of a threat to him? Now, it's obvious they wouldn't. The simple answer is no. And while a recent poll has shown that 53% of New Yorkers support an opponent to Cuomo, as seen through these polls, when you transition to a not just a generic opponent, but to a generic Republican, Cuomo defeats the generic Republican by double digits. as seen in this one poll, where Cuomo defeated the generic Republican by 10 points. And the reason for this is because, firstly, New York is a very partisan state. Remember, it is one of the most democratic states in the entire United States. Biden won it by 60%. Now, it was D plus 23, which is a pretty sizable margin. Even if such a scandal-plagued candidate like Cuomo were on the ticket, most Democrats would likely bite the bullet and vote for him rather than a Republican. That's just how partisan things have become in the country in general. Political scandals just don't have the same effect they used to. Remember back to the Hunter Biden scandal during the 2020 presidential election. And the scandal did not have any effect, really, on Joe Biden's campaign nor his poll numbers. And also remember back to Donald Trump's tax returns. There was a big deal out of that during midway into the election. Neither did that affect the race in the slightest, and people's support of Trump. At best, according to one of the recent polls, a generic Republican would, as shown, just lose by 10 points to Cuomo. The only Republican who has received polling on a head to head matchup with Cuomo thus far is Elise Stefanik, who has declined to run eventually, although she might run later on, which remains to be seen. And the poll showed her behind by 12 points against Andrew Cuomo. Looking at candidates who have declared a run for the governorship in the Republican primary, you can see a few. If these are the top three candidates in the race, the rest are relatively not well known. We have Rob Astorino, who actually ran in 2014 against Cuomo, and he lost to Cuomo by 14 points. I mean, that's it. That's an okay showing for a Republican, especially during a red wave year. But it's not a great showing, really. And as for the other two candidates, one of them is Rudy Giuliani, the son of not Rudy Giuliani. I've been mistaken. It's Andrew Giuliani, the son of Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York City and an advisor to Trump, as many of you know. And there's also Lee Zeldin from New York's 1st District. Zeldin seems to be the frontrunner in the primary race thus far, due to the fact he's managed to get a number of endorsements from county officials, but he seems unlikely to win in the general election, as he stood by Trump as a staunch ally and defended his claims of election fraud, which won't play over well in such a liberal state like New York. Sure, being such a staunch supporter of Trump might play well in a safe red state or in a Republican primary, but it will do no good if you're running in the general election in a deep blue state. Now, the remainder of candidates don't appear to stand much of a chance in the general election either if they manage to beat Zeldin. New York is just such a partisan state that will be very unlikely for a Republican win. It's just such an uphill battle. At best, the Republican candidate, whoever that may be, will make the race within 15 to 20 to 10 points, which is a likely margin. And Cuomo might even win by above that amount in his best case scenario. And with that said, this is my New York gubernatorial race rating thus far. I have it as likely D. I think that Cuomo will win the race by 12 to 14 points about, but he might uh, do worse or he might do better than that and win it by a safe margin. And that's where I'm going to end this video at. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in this race? Will Cuomo come out of his renomination uh, and win his re-election in the general election? Will he lose his renomination to, say, AOC maybe, or one of the other candidates like Hakeem Jeffries? Um, will the Republicans somehow manage to win the race, however impossible that may seem? Leave a comment saying your thoughts. And with that said, just like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And yeah, I will see you all in the next